This is the To The Brim Podcast, where we openly discuss all things mental health, including eating disorders, anxiety, depression, and more.
I'm Lauren, a licensed clinical social worker who specializes in anxiety, depression, OCD, and other mental health diagnoses.
And I'm Brandy, a registered dietitian who specializes in eating disorders and body image disturbance.
As healthcare providers, we know you can't pour from an empty cup.
We hope to shine a light on mental health issues in an authentic and accessible way and help you fill your mental health cup with knowledge, clarity, and validation.
This podcast is for information and educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical or mental health advice.
We're excited to help you fill your cup so that you can take on life one sip at a time. Hey, welcome back. This is the To The Brim Podcast, and we are going to check in first and foremost today with how are we landing and what are we drinking? Go ahead, Lauren.
Beautiful. I'm feeling some afternoon gloomy, like snoozy type of vibes. I just feel like I could take a nap. It doesn't help that I didn't sleep great last night, and I'm not necessarily feeling overwhelmed, but I do have a baby shower tomorrow that I'm hosting with our other sister, so there's a lot to do even later in the evening, so I'm just trying to fuel up with my water because it is important to stay hydrated. That might help with my sleepiness, but it's also just water's good. Water's so good for you. I'm terrible at drinking water, but a lot of the times when I've had other like sugary drinks, it's good to balance it out with water. So I'm just trying to find my balance now this afternoon.
Share your cup here a little bit. It's very decked out.
It's my Stanley cup. I got one. I was working at Starbucks, and then it dropped. I was never going to put stickers on it, but then it dropped and got scuffed, and I was like, well, let me just cover that up. So this is a little bit of me and my personality. My favorite sticker is just, it says, be a kind human. And
Aww.
It's so valid.
Love that.
Just be a kind human. How are you landing, Brandy? What's your mental health look like right now?
It's looking pretty good, actually. I'm feeling pretty neutral. I'm not like sleepy, but I'm also like, I think I'm starting to approach that like afternoon wind down time.
We need some naps.
Yeah. And so it's like, I'm excited to record this episode though. And then I think I'll be ready to like wind down for the evening.
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've got some, I think it's a cranberry apple cider or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not like usually one for cranberry juice, but I really like the one with the apple cider. So that is what I'm going to be sipping on. And
Is it a cold beverage or a warm beverage?
I think you could do it either way. I have it cold today.
Oh, okay.
I think you
just
could
double
heat
checking.
it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'll try that though.
Yeah.
To heat it up.
Well, now that we've checked in, Brandy and I are going to be talking about some things that are kind of on our mental health checklist, and we want you guys to be cognizant too. You listen or be mentally active with us here. We wrote down some questions for each other ahead of time to answer and bring to this session is what I want to call it.
I know.
But as we're talking about the answers to these questions, feel free to think of your own, and if you're confident, put them in the comment section below. We'd love to hear some feedback. So without further ado, let's get started. The first question, Brandy asked me was, what are your top 3 priorities in taking care of your mental health? And the first one I've got to say is self-care. It's so important to take care of yourself. And self-care isn't like going to the salon and getting your nails done or your hair done. It can be, I took a nap today, which is a theme I'm sensing. Or it can be, I brushed my hair, I fed myself, I stretched. These things you're playing in. Yeah, exactly. These things play into filling your cup or your battery again, to feel like yourself. So I feel like self-care is really important. I also mentioned boundaries. Boundaries are ever so important, and boundaries look so different for so many people, but we could dive into that a little bit later. And then, of course, confidence. I think with mental health, you have to know who you are and what's going to apply and what doesn't. I hear a lot of, self-criticism from a lot of my clients, just saying, oh, I don't behave this way because I'm afraid of how I'll be judged in public, or I would never do XYZ. It's not like a social standard or whatever. And I'm just like, hold your head up high. Like, you are allowed to behave however you want. When people were dyeing their hair what we used to call crazy colors, like green or purple or blue or whatever, that's such a norm now. It wasn't before, but we made it normal because the person who chose that hair color wore it with confidence.
Yeah.
So what's the harm? You know, if they don't like your hair color, so what? It doesn't matter. So that's my motto too, is just to hold some confidence. I actually, on my personal Instagram account, I put it was a quote. I can't tell you who the quote is from, but I haven't changed it since like early high school, late middle school or something like that. It says, confidence is not will they like me. Confidence is I'll be fine if they don't. And I don't want to change it because I need to remember that, especially when making a post. That's kind of scary.
Sure.
Just be confident in your decisions. So anyways.
Speaking of great quotes for self-compassion in particular, I can't actually remember where I saw this quote. It was fairly recently though. I'll have to look it up and find it. But it was like, we work with some of the most self-compassionate people, I think. We really do. And what we're seeing though is like, it's so hard for them to turn it back in on themselves.
Totally.
That was the essence of the quote. It's like, you are self-compassionate. We know that like you have compassion for your family or your friends or your pets, and we treat everybody else with respect. Like, can we also treat ourselves with respect and talk to ourselves in a self-compassionate way? Totally.
A lot of the times I ask my clients, you know, if your friend was going through the same thing, how would you react? How would you respond to that person? And, you know, they're always so kind, you know, I don't need to, or I need to watch what I say, but they don't need to watch what they say, you know. They should be able to be vulnerable and say whatever they want. And it's like, well, why is that the case for your friend but not for you? Like you said, these people are so compassionate or empathetic or sympathetic towards others, and we need to turn that inward a little bit. Totally. I like that. What would you say are your top three, or what's important?
Yeah, it took me a long time to realize that sleep is like so important for my mental health checklist, because it took until like having a kid, and this was 7.5 years ago that I had a kid, but that like I realized how good I had it in sleep. And then when I had the baby, I don't think I slept for the first 3 days. Not to scare you, I'm sure I'm about to have a baby here in the next couple months, but the sleep pattern after that was just like never got better for like 3 years probably. It was like just ever changing, and it never was enough. And so I'm finally, maybe for like the past 2 years at least, there's been hiccups, but like the sleep is so much better. And I've learned too, as I've gotten older, I don't need as much. I used to need like 10 hours, and now I can get away with like 7 and actually like be okay.
Interesting.
It was a discovery for me, but it was like, okay, I know if I don't get good sleep, I just like have a terrible day, I'm in a terrible mood, I'm just not a good person to be around.
Did you know that there's reasoning for why you need less sleep as you get older?
Tell me, I'm sure. I haven't heard this.
So as, you know, you develop, you know, you go through these developmental stages, you need actually more sleep. So you can make these strong neural connections in your brain. But as you grow older, you have these really strong neural connections already. And so I'm thinking about our grandfather, who only sleeps like 4 hours a night because he's got so much wisdom, he's got so much knowledge, he's made all of these neural connections that like he doesn't need to sleep so long because those connections are already so strong. Like that's the time of day that our brains, you know, hold on to that information so greatly. So it's interesting. That's why they kind of tell you to study before you go to bed, so that you can make strong neural connections when you sleep, and all this other good stuff. But I just thought that was worth mentioning. Like, you're like, oh, I don't need as much sleep. Well, there's a reason for that.
Maybe it correlates to my little gray hairs that are cropping up now. I'm just so wise.
Stop! You're so funny.
I'm just getting so wise. I have gray hairs. I don't need to sleep as much.
I love it. I mean, why not?
Yeah. Okay, other things on my mental health checklist. A big one has been, like you mentioned, setting boundaries for me as well, and especially like around my time, just like protecting, especially like time at home, because I feel I say that, but I also like work from home 5 days a week. But like I'm in my little space for work, and then I'll go back into the main house for, you know, the short hours in the morning and in the evening that I'm not working. But then like on the weekends, I'm out of the house usually. Like we're going to a family event,
Totally.
or we're, going to lunch with a friend or whatever it might be, or we got errands to run.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like it's always go, go, go.
Sure.
And so I'm like trying my damnedest to make at least one weekend in a month where I'm just like home the whole weekend.
That's smart.
Like I don't have to change into my go out clothes or anything. I can just like lounge and and snack on good stuff and hang out with my kiddo and like maybe like play games and actually like have more fun and laughter and things like that.
Sounds like a good weekend to me.
I know, right? But even recently, there was a weekend that I had like declined to drive an hour and a half away for the second. It would be the third time this month that I would be driving an hour and a half to go to an event, and so I had declined it kind of early on, like at the end of last month. I was like, I don't think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna like protect my peace. Like I really love you guys, but I'm gonna see you like 2 or 3 other times this month.
Right.
I think I'm gonna just miss this one. And there was a lot of maybe like people pleasing to me of like, well, why don't we have it at your house and we can drive to you? And why don't we maybe move it to this day or move it out to this time? I'm like, guys, like don't change your plans for me. Like I really would love to just like be that it, right? Like that's it. I'm not gonna go, and just like have finally a weekend to be at home, like the lounge weekend, the home weekend.
Plus, you can't really have that kind of a weekend if people are coming to you anyways. Like, as accommodating as they're trying to be, that's still a boundary that you're trying to set. And, like, I need me time. You know, we sometimes can put on this mask or, this alternate personality to keep people happy, especially in hosting. Yes. So, yeah, I like that you upheld that boundary.
And I felt bad in the moment because they're trying to be accommodating, and I'm just like, no. And and then somebody else is like, well, I was already planning to go this way. I scheduled something else. I'm like, please don't change your plans.
Right.
Like I'm gonna see you 2 other times this month at least. Just be together if you want to be together, and I will catch up with you.
Thanks
later.
for including me.
Yes.
But the
Next
boundary
time
has been set. Don't cross the boundary. Valid. Okay.
So that's another big thing that like fills my cup. And then probably just something like more fun, more not traditional of like nutrition and exercise and sleep and stress, is like just music for me. It's a huge one that really fills my cup. And I love, like, as much as I am just griping about driving for an hour and a half, like I love when I can get in the car by myself and just like be able to sing along with whatever's coming on my Spotify playlist. So that actually like really fills my cup too.
What kind of music do you listen to?
I'm a country girl.
I knew it. No.
At the heart, I really love country. Every once in a while, we'll get like some jazz or some John Mayer or something like that in there. Some Taylor Swift. But yeah, for the most part, I got a big old country playlist.
Love it. Love it. Beautiful.
Right. Well, you had mentioned boundaries, and I'm just curious, as we're talking about upholding boundaries and how hard it can be, like, talk to me about times when you struggle to put up a boundary, or like you need to put up one, and how do people deal with that? Because I feel like that can be a really hard thing to start doing when we're really people pleasing.
Absolutely, and everybody kind of has that people pleasing quality. I mean, we are a social species, so it's in our nature to accommodate or want to make things work with others. I think I started setting the most boundaries when I was in school. So like my undergraduate, my graduate program, a lot of the times people were anticipating that I would travel home for like the holidays or for events, like other baby showers or birthday parties, things like that. And there was a lot of times where I just had to be like, sorry, I can't. And sometimes it came alongside the excuse of I can't afford the gas, or I just need to study, or I have an assignment due. And that was like a good excuse, but it was also just a really good marker to say, I can't this time. And it doesn't necessarily have to come alongside a reason, but I think it pairs really nicely with that confidence piece too, is knowing that I need to set aside time for my schoolwork so that I'm not falling behind, so that I can, I guess, like gain this freedom in a sense. And by freedom, I mean, I'm no longer in school. That's one less aspect that I have in my life to worry about. So I work, and then I have my family life, and my social life, if you can even call it a social life. But there will be boundaries where like I'm not comfortable, and open and honest communication, I think, is also really important when it comes to setting boundaries. Me and my partner we're so focused on like being blunt, even if it hurts, kind of a vibe. Yeah. And you know, we can tweak the wording later if we're really hurt by it, but just saying, you know, so and so is going to go out to eat. They've invited us. Do you want to go? And I honestly more often have been saying, I spend the whole day talking to people, and I don't think I have the energy to be, you know, a good part of this conversation or part of the group or whatever. Sure. And it's almost come to the point where, like, on the weekdays, nobody asks me to go and hang out, and that's good. Because I'm working, you know, I'm talking, there is a difference between mentally drained and physically drained, but basically I'm mentally drained, trying to, like, talk about all these things with other people after I've talked about all these things with clients. So, sure. Anyways, that is a huge piece, and trying to set boundaries with nonverbal communication as well, I think, is really important. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean not always answering a phone call. I'm somebody who is so responsive. Like, I will typically text you back or call you back in the next 5 minutes. But there comes a piece in time that says, like, I'm out shopping and I don't want to talk to you on the phone while I'm shopping. And so I don't feel obligated to answer that phone call. Or if somebody does call me, you know, I'll send them a text back and just say, hey, I'm a little busy right now. Can we schedule a time to call instead? I'm not somebody who enjoys random or whatever sparse communication that it's not normal, I guess, for us to be on a phone call every once in a while. Like, if mom calls or a family member calls, sure, I'm going to answer the phone. If a friend is calling, I want to answer the phone, but I also know that certain friends can talk for hours and hours and hours. And so I really have to pick and choose boundary-wise what that looks like. So that's kind of the difference between what boundaries look like for me when I was in school versus outside of school and just working. There's so many different types of boundaries, like I said, that we could talk about, like with family or with friends and with work even. I think work boundaries are really, really strong to uphold. I caught myself, like, in bad sleep last night, waking up and being like, I wonder how I can benefit or improve, like, my relationship with this client, or what resources I can bring. And I'm like, Lauren, you're not at work. Stop thinking about work. And it can be so challenging. But I think a lot of that DBT tool, the stop, you know, I imagine this big old stop sign. And for those who aren't familiar, STOP is an acronym. And if I'm remembering correctly, it stands for stop, take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully. Yeah, proceed with caution or mindfully. And so I have to take that step back, notice that I'm thinking about things that I shouldn't be thinking about right now, and then proceed with, you know, a change in topic for myself. You know, I'm talking with myself in the middle of the night. Like, I got to change that. So that's another boundary that we could talk about, especially working from home. Mm-hmm. You know, you and I are fortunate to have our own offices, and so I don't know what you imagine, but I imagine kind of like a force field, or like a shower or something as I walk through the doorway that, like, pulls back all of these thoughts when I'm thinking about work. And when I go out to have lunch or take a break, I don't think about work hardly ever. I'm thinking about, okay, when do I need to go back, because maybe I need to complete this assessment for somebody and prepare for my next session or whatever. But for a good 30 to 45 minutes, I'm not thinking about it. So again, boundaries are so different for each and every person, but I think that they're so important to talk about or reflect upon to, I don't know, fulfill yourself in a way. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, to have that break. As you were talking too, I was thinking, like, I do have a shut off kind of, a shut off valve for when I leave my office. But I've started also, so I have a private practice. I see a few patients on Fridays, and then the rest of the week I work virtually at Center for Discovery, and they use, like, the Teams and Outlook kind of thing. And so because we're virtual, like, my Teams messages are blowing up all day. Mm-hmm. And so I usually do have them on during the week. I turn them off on Friday, the notifications.
Oh, good.
Because I don't want them all Friday and all weekend even. Sometimes they're going off. But then, like, when I'm going in to take a break, it is so hard not to check my phone, because I can see the little icon has popped up. And it's like, oh my gosh, what if somebody needs me? Like, what if they're tagging me? I just feel like, no, you're on break.
Yes.
Like, you need to stop. It will be there in 15 minutes when you get back.
Totally. Oh, I have the same thing. I have a few different emails and ways to get in contact. So I don't have like a work phone number. So anybody who has like my personal phone number or my work phone number, like it all goes to the same spot. So I have to set that boundary and say, oh, this client texted me. I'm on my break. I'm not going to, like if I decide to go back to work at, 5 minutes early, sure, I can fit in a quick text. But if it's after hours, if it's on the weekends, like my clients know I'm not going to respond. So it's, even though it makes me uncomfortable to see that notification, I'm not going to respond because that is part of my boundaries.
Well, that's really fun.
It's hard, but it's good.
No, it is really hard. There's no doubt about that. Okay. Let's see. What else do we got on here?
Let's see. Oh, yeah, we did talk a whole lot about boundaries. What about if you had ample time to focus on your mental health? What would you want to improve? What would you make time for?
I think for me personally, I would like to have more time to do like some joyful movement.
What is that?
Joyful movement. We would call it exercise or physical activity or things like that, but
that sounds like work. I like the joyful.
Yeah, the joyful feels better. And that's kind of, it's a different way of thinking about it versus like this diet culture or hustle culture-y thing of like, where I have to feel guilty if I don't do it. Because I don't necessarily feel ashamed or guilty if I don't exercise, but I would like to have more opportunities to do things that I really enjoy. Like, for example, just going on a walk outside is always very enjoyable. The weather, it's not so nice this time of year to go on a walk, and sometimes it's just like I've been cold all day and I don't want to go out in the cold. So that's like a deterrent. But I think if I had more time, then maybe I would like play badminton, like indoor badminton.
Yeah, fun.
Or other like kind of sporty things. And so anyway, just like moving my body is really fun. Or maybe like take a yoga class or something like
sign
that.
Me up.
Yeah. Like I think that would be really enjoyable. And right now it's just, I don't have the right schedule to like make some of that stuff work. And so when I do have time, I am like maybe pulling something up on YouTube. But yeah, we're just not in that time of life for me, and that's okay. Like I'm not saying I'll never ever go to a yoga class or something like that, but it's like not right now.
Sure.
A young kiddo, and the hours that I'm working, it's just like not feasible. But that would be something I would want to focus more time on.
And with joyful movement, is that like not an obligation? It's just when you choose. Okay.
Right.
Because if you sign up for like a yoga class, you can choose how frequently you want to go.
Totally.
But if you were to sign up for like club volleyball or something, then you're committing to something. So just wanted to differentiate the two.
Yeah, and I think like for some people that might be helpful to like have a class or something that they're committed to, a personal training time, whatever it might be, and sometimes that's helpful to just like get them going. Like we can talk all day about like just like starting to do something, right, and just like getting the first step done, and then really getting into the thing that you enjoy. But this would be like, if I had a plan to go for a walk, but like I don't feel very good, or I didn't get a lot of sleep, or I just don't feel like it, like that those are valid excuses to not move your body, and that we don't need to feel bad about it.
You're leaning into some self-compassion.
Yeah, man.
Some grace.
Exactly.
For yourself. Love that.
Exactly.
What else would you make time for?
Let's see. I think, kind of like you were saying, during the week, it doesn't feel super feasible right now to like want to go out to dinner after work.
Yeah.
Or even before. I work like right in the middle of the day from like 11 to 8 sometimes. And so I think for me, like something that does really fill my cup though is like having time to talk to an adult and not a kiddo. Like have time to maybe go do something new. Like I have a friend who wants to do like a candle making class together.
Fun.
And so just like finding the time and the place in the new year is like amazing. But it is like a challenge because I don't have as much time.
I get that.
And then like the mental reserves, the physical energy reserves even like at the end of the week are like sometimes still buffering.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, it gets so dark so early now. And so, I don't know how you feel. Like, I've been giving myself a lot more grace if after work, I mean, I get off work around like 6:30, and the sun is setting, I go crawl in bed. I may not fall asleep, but I'm like in my bed watching a show. And
sure.
It's so funny. I had a client the other day be like, I can't tell if I'm depressed. Like, I'm isolating and I want to be in a dark room. And I'm like, can that be what self-care looks like in the wintertime? Is that okay?
Yeah.
She was like, yeah, because I don't really feel depressed. It's just the symptoms of depression. And I was like,
sure.
There is a differentiation here. You have this emotion that says I am depressed and sad and gloomy or whatever, and then you have a depressive disorder. Those two things are very, very different. So this is just what self-care looks like in the wintertime. If you don't want to go on a walk because it's gloomy and rainy, by all means, you do not have to.
Yeah. Because
you're less active during this time of year doesn't make you any less of a human being.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else that you would make time for?
I don't think so. I think those were like my big two.
Yeah. I think if I had the opportunity financially to make time for something, I would also say some introverted but extroverted activities, if that makes any sense. So like, I really enjoyed going to a wine and sip. That was so fun. It's a social opportunity, but it's not, let's see, it doesn't drain me. That's something that would fill my cup, and it lets me tap into this creative side of myself that I don't get to do very often. Sure. You know, if you just put a canvas and paints in front of me, I'm like, ooh, I don't know what to draw. So I need some guidance, or I want to learn some new skills. I did do some hot yoga classes, which were really fun.
Wow.
Can't do that now because I can't cook Miss Girl.
Yes.
But yeah, just like tapping into out of the home stuff, especially because we work from home, and then after work we are home. So getting out of the house wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but in a way that doesn't drain any more of my battery or empty out my cup, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah. But yeah, that's I think what I would make more time for. Sure.
Okay, what do we got next here? Ooh, who do you talk to about your mental health?
Do you want to start us off, or do you want me to?
I can start if you want to think about it for a minute.
Go ahead.
I think my husband is the biggest one, and he's the one I go to when I'm like frustrated that I can't do something. Okay. Like there's a lot to do with insurance billing, right, in a private practice, and it's been a huge learning curve that I've been wanting to learn. I was so scared to do it for a long time, and now I'm like doing it. But there will be times when I'm on the verge of tears because I'm so frustrated with like a process or something. And I can just text him and be like, can you come look at this just for a minute? Just tell me what I'm doing wrong. Because he, in his past like military career, he was kind of they call it like riding a desk. And so he was more of like a data entry processing.
Fact checker, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he has a really good eye to just like look at my problem, like look at the instructions of maybe what's read in the form or whatever, and be like, yesterday he's like, oh, like, did you mean to do it for this insurance? And I was like, oh, you're right. They have this insurance, but it's this like other like section that's called something else. And so you're right. I needed to change that. And then it all worked perfectly. So he knows me so well that like, yes, I can be really frustrated, and I'm a frustrated crier, and he just knows like he's my fixer. He needs to come in and fix it, and then I need a big hug afterwards.
Yeah, me too, sis.
Yeah, I need a real big hug afterwards, and sometimes I just need to let the frustration out and just cry, and then I'll be good.
I love that. Crying is a coping skill.
It is a coping skill. Absolutely. Yes. And I think you are like my other big person. I have other friends, of course, too, that I talk to, but you and me, if you didn't listen to the intro, we're sisters, and we're the only ones in our family interested in mental health, and that really understand it to a better degree. Yeah. And so it's like, I love our parents dearly, but I can't talk about certain things with them because it feels like it's going to get written off.
Yeah, I've definitely tried to talk to Mom about some mental health things, and again, it comes into full loop that like we just don't understand it because we haven't experienced it. You know, I think mental health wasn't something, broadcasted in 60s, 70s, whatever, when they were in high school. So it was never normalized. They never was able to put a name to it. You just push through the uncomfortable, and it's not a disorder.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, like, Mom, I have an anxiety or a panic disorder, and she can just listen. She can just be there, which is a really great coping skill or somebody to turn to if you're just looking for somebody to be present. But it's it doesn't come alongside the advice that you may be looking for if you're going through a panic attack.
Sure.
So that's really challenging. I don't know if you knew, but our dad, he wanted to major in psychology, but
I didn't know that.
No?
What?
Oh my gosh. He went to college for a couple years, which, just a 4-year university. The first 2 years are kind of just testing the waters around all these different things. But he wanted to get into psychology and learned that he needed to psychoanalyze himself, and he dropped out. And if you know Dad, you'll know why that's so funny. But so I do sense like he could have good potential for mental health disorders. I think I asked him one time, like, Dad, were you ever diagnosed with a mood disorder? He was like, probably, but like not actually.
That's funny.
So anyways, we could go on for days about our family dynamics, but
yes,
it is challenging to have these conversations with somebody who doesn't have that background knowledge or education about mental health. And so I would agree that I talk to you a lot of the time about some mental health. I was talking to you about anxiety or panic when it came to delivery, and that was like in my 4th month of pregnancy. It's like not time for me to be anxious about that yet, but here I am. So I would agree. I talk to you a lot about some mental health stuff. I think you understand it from a very different perspective. And then, not to be a copycat, but my partner too, he also doesn't quite understand mental health because he's never experienced that type of anxiety, but it is interesting to have these conversations with him. There was a time, again, in first trimester, I was ill all the time. I had like panic attacks around being ill, and so I had to talk to him about, I don't remember exactly how it came up, but I was talking to him about how I hated throwing up. And so he tried to put in an analogy where we both could understand. He goes, if we were on an inner tube or whatever, like being pulled by a jet ski or whatever, I told him if that were me and I knew that we were going too fast and I was going to fall off, I'd hold on and grip harder for dear life. Like, I do not want to fall in the water. I have some insecurities about what is in the water. That's another fear. And I would hold on for dear life and just try to like scream and be like, slow down, or it's too fast, or something. He goes, I would let go. I was like, what do you mean you, wait, what? He's like, I don't like to fall in the water either. It hurts. I'm stranded. I have to wait for somebody to come pick me up. And instead of trying to control that fear, I let go of that fear. And I was like, whoa.
Just give you another mind blown.
So he was able to challenge and therapy me a little bit, challenge my perspectives on facing fears. And that's so true. I mean, we have to do that in baby steps, but even though he hasn't experienced anxiety like I have experienced anxiety or panic, he still can talk to me about some of those things. And if not, then him just being there, sitting in the uncomfortable with me is so reassuring. He actually used to say, it's fine, you're okay. And I kept saying, what is okay? Define okay for me, because what does that even mean? I love to pose that to my clients too. And so I said, you're no longer allowed to tell me it's going to be okay, because we don't know that for sure. Anything could happen. So instead, just acknowledge how I'm feeling. You're feeling anxious, and be here with me. That's all you really have to do. And I think our mom is really good at that too. She's just good at being there when you need a presence. And she's such a good sounding board. We're so confident that her presence just being there is really useful. So anyways, partner, you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being my person.
Thank you for being my person. You've gone through a little bit more of life than I have, and so just a little. So it's nice to be able to reach out for advice too, knowing that it's coming from a similar place. So I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Well, you had mentioned like all of these kind of situations you were in about like having anxiety or panic, and that just, it makes me think about just the general topic of like not feeling in control. And so like what do you see when you work with your patients or even for yourself about like that sense of like losing control? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah, great question. I definitely want to touch more on this, maybe in another future podcast, but I try to rewrite anxiety's purpose, and it's worked for myself too. So I try to say, how do you view anxiety? Typically it's in this negative presence, right? Where we try to push it or shove it away and say like, I don't need this. And it actually only festers the anxiety and makes it worse. So it's kind of like if I was to tell you, don't think about an elephant, you automatically think about an elephant. And then how many more times in the next 5 minutes are you going to think about, oh yeah, elephant.
Oh,
and that's what kind of our anxiety does, is go away anxiety. We don't need to be nervous about thoughts about death or something. And so we may be reading a book to our kid, death. We may be petting our cat, death. Like it just pops up. So I flip it and I say, what would anxiety's positive intention for you be? Why would anxiety be telling you to think about death? Let's make friends with anxiety right now. What would it have for you? And so I actually kind of reflected myself as like, anxiety, when my anxiety pops up, I think that's positive intention is just to ensure that I'm safe and comfortable. So if I'm trying something new, like hiking a really steep mountain that has a cliff, like my anxiety is there, my fear is there because it wants to ensure that I'm safe, that I'm thinking things through, that I'm comfortable, because there are mountain climbers or rock climbers who have done it time and again. They know their skill set. They are so confident in climbing that mountain. But if you put me on a real rock wall, hell no.
No, ma'am.
So I like to rewrite anxiety's purpose a little bit. I think that's kind of where I started a baseline with all of my clients. It's just, let's fix our thoughts. Let's rewrite history a little bit. Anxiety doesn't have to be a negative. It can be a positive. I mean, it's instrumental. I'm trying to think about the correct word. It's been adaptive for us, right? We needed that way back when, and dangers, like real physical dangers, were ever so present. Like a tiger or a bear. Like if a bear walked in here, not walked, but if a bear came into this room, we would accurately turn to our anxiety to help us prepare for danger. Yeah. And over time, it's just festered into worrying about things that are real physical dangers.
Right.
We just manifest our not so physical dangers, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
It does. Like we're getting into like our sympathetic nervous system.
Totally.
Our fight or flight, even though there's not a physical presence that maybe is like, a chat on your work. That, like
sending an email.
Sending a big email to somebody. Yeah. And so, all of what you're talking about reminds me of IFS, internal family systems. Like talking to that part, right? This protector or this manager, whoever it may be, that's bringing up the anxiety. Mm-hmm. But I love that you're talking about like rewriting the story, because we do tend to tell ourselves lots of stories, and they might not even be an accurate representation of what's going on. But to practice, what would it be like if I didn't write this story from my sympathetic, right? Mm-hmm. What if I wrote this from, okay, I'm more calm and collected? What would that story sound like if I was looking at that situation through that lens? Right.
And one more thing I'll probably mention is, have you seen Inside Out 2?
Yes.
Okay, so that scene where Joy and the rest of the characters are kind of in that imagination land in the pillow fort or whatever, and Anxiety has like this big TV screen, and she's like, write about all the things that could go wrong. And Joy and them are like, they could win. They could, have this happy memory. But Anxiety wants you to think about what could go wrong. But we hardly ever ask ourselves, what are the things that could go right in this moment?
Totally.
So let's take Joy's perspective and not Anxiety's, please.
I love it.
So anyways, gosh.
Cute movie.
What about, is this where we're at right now? Gosh, okay.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give a client who struggles to find happiness?
Yeah, this one is, I think, challenging for everybody to answer. Yeah. Like, there's so many right answers to this question.
And what a construct, happiness.
I know. Like, we could even talk about what that means. But I think the first thing that comes to my brain is just, like, coming back to that self-compassion lens. Mm-hmm. Like, if bullying ourselves or guilting ourselves worked, like, wouldn't it wouldn't we have accomplished what we wanted?
Good point.
By then?
Yeah.
Like if we're trying to eat better or exercise more or sleep better, whatever it is, like feeling like getting down on ourselves and feeling bad about it is not helping. So having that grace towards ourselves that we're just doing the best we can, and yeah, trying to bring back that it doesn't even have to be positive, but maybe just like a more neutral approach to how we talk to ourselves, I think can be really helpful in finding some happiness again.
Totally.
When we were talking off mic before we started here, we were talking about this idea of like trusting the process when we're working on maybe our mental health and trying to find happiness. So yeah, what kind of processes do you think you were thinking about in that time?
Oh yeah, good question. Every client's journey is going to look so different, which is, something I mentioned in our intro podcast is this solution focused or person centered therapy is a modality that I like to put into my practice, and it's because I don't have the answers for you. You have the answers for you. You just got to pull it from, your wise mind, which is a DBT term that maybe we'll talk about later. Yeah. Basically taking those baby steps. If a client wants to learn how to manage their anxiety better, and I say manage because it's not a goal to eliminate anxiety. We still need it. So we want to learn how to manage or work with our anxiety. We have to trust the process in the sense of like the way that we've been doing things isn't working. Yeah. I have a client who I just recently started with, and she was like, when I'm anxious, I shut down. I just like kind of depersonalize or disconnect. Yeah. And that's worked for me, but it hasn't worked for me. It doesn't cure the anxiety. She still feels anxious while depersonalized. And in my version of anxiety, I get a little bit lightheaded at times, but I'm never totally disassociated. And so we want to rewrite what that looks like for her, because depersonalizing or, taking herself out of context isn't solving anything. It's prolonging her anxiety and potentially making it worse. So, she was pretty apprehensive about coming to therapy, not really knowing what to expect, and being in an older age, she was just like, well, I can muster through. But somehow, whatever decisions that she made brought her into our sessions together, and we just need to trust that decision was either, right or wrong. I talk a lot about radical acceptance, which is another DBT term, but basically you cannot change the past, and getting angry at it or trying to put rhyme to reason with it isn't going to solve anything. So let's look at how to move forward from it and just accept that this has happened for a reason. And so whatever chain of events that led that person here, let's roll with it. Let's be confident in that. Let's trust this process. And again, that doesn't mean that you can't raise an eyebrow or put questions to the process, right? Why are we talking about anxiety when I'm actually feeling depressed? Yeah, please call me out on my shit. We are not here to talk about, anxiety if you are feeling depressed, but I may not be the right fit for you, and that's okay. Let's find somebody who is. I always preach that you should shop around for a therapist before you commit to one, because you may be trusting with one therapist versus another. So anyways, just trusting what your body and your mind is telling you is good. And I'm sure the same concepts can kind of apply to intuitive eating or healthy at all sizes kind of a vibe is. Yeah. You need to listen to your body's signals. They are there for a reason. We wouldn't have been given these signals or these emotions or whatever you want to call them if we weren't meant to utilize them. Yeah. And so I guess that's kind of what I mean by trusting the process is you can put questions to reality, but overall, we are working towards a finish line. We're working towards a goal, and whatever path that looks like along the way, just trust it. There could be forks in the road, dead ends. Yeah. We have to turn around and go back. Whatever the case may be, we will eventually get to that finish line. Yeah, totally. And I think too, you made such a good point about maybe shopping around for the right person. Yeah. And I think that shouldn't be something that we're afraid to do, right? A lot of people get uncomfortable talking about it. Yeah, but it's important, because if we don't feel that connection and feel like we can foster this relationship that is really beneficial for our recovery from whatever we're recovering from, right? If we don't have a good connection
it doesn't have to be with a mental health provider or even a health professional at all. It could be with your sister or your husband or whoever, right? Like, just like having someone that you really trust and feel connected to, like that's key.
It's instrumental.
It is.
And especially if you put that back into the mental health or healthcare field, is you're almost harming yourself rather than helping yourself. Yeah. If you are just sticking with the best, or not the best, but the only available provider.
Sure.
I had a conversation again with another client that was like, well, I'm seeing this psychiatrist because they were the only person who was available, and they got me on medications. And I was like, okay, that's great, but now that you feel a little bit more stable, let's question that a little bit, because you just said, like, you just randomly stopped taking your medications and you're not comfortable telling your physician that. So that tells me that we need to go back and look at that area in life and fix or tweak a couple of things. Like, let's find you a new psychiatrist that you jive with. You know, now that I can be here and maybe help you find some extra resources versus doing it on your own and in an elevated state of mind. Let's work together and fix this area of life, because it's also going to be instrumental to your growth in therapy and in any ways. Totally. I could go on and on, but let's not harm yourself. Let's help yourself get the right providers or the right social group or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, totally. What do you think you would say to someone who's maybe ambivalent to starting therapy? Like, do you get patients like that come in your door?
All the time, actually. Goodness. Mental health is hard. It's not something people are comfortable talking about. And especially, I mean, I think I've said this too, maybe in the intro podcast, that I'm not totally comfortable talking about myself. And so I guess the apprehension, I think, lies more with people who aren't sure that they need therapy and have trudged through life, ups and downs on their own. They've had themselves to rely on, or close family members or friends to rely on to get them through sticky moments. But maybe therapy is a chapter in your life that you should just explore. And I tell a lot of my clients, especially in our intakes, that my controversial goal for you is to gain all this knowledge and all these resources to one day not need therapy. And I think most therapists are like, keep coming to me, there's so much to work on, I love money. I'm like, let's cycle through. Like, if you're good, graduate, care, go out and be a successful human being. I am not here for, I'm sure you can relate, I'm not here for the money. I'm here for the passion that I have towards mental health. And again, I've suffered mental health wise, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. So let's figure out what's missing, or figure out some tools that will help you for this season of life and move forward. And I think that actually sparks a lot of people to be like, oh, I've never heard that before from a therapist, and I think I do want to schedule a follow-up. I was telling these clients that I was 6-7 months pregnant, and I was like, well, we can start therapy in 3 months, see where you land, and if you feel like you're ready to go out back into the world with the tools that I've given you, and you don't need to come back, that's okay. Or we can take a little break from therapy while I recover, and then you can, decide to leave or come back, whatever. And a lot of people were receptive to that. They really enjoy, the people who have been apprehensive and stuck along with it, they've enjoyed our conversations, and they're like, when are you leaving again? Don't leave. Don't leave. But again, it's all about that knowledge. I want to fill your brain with more knowledge. We didn't all go to school for mental health, and I love sharing the knowledge that I do have so that individuals can grow into better human beings. So even if you are apprehensive, I would still give it a try. I would still go to 1 or 2 intake sessions with 2 or 3 different providers just to see what happens. And if you're still like, I'm not convinced, by all means, you do not have to stay. But there is that possibility that there will be no growth, because how are you supposed to grow from anxiety if you don't take the time to learn about what it is or what that looks like for you? We get to hone in on you in our time together. And so there's more room for growth in our time than you kind of trying to learn it on your own. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does. And I'll say too, from someone who, even though I worked as a dietitian for, I guess it would have been 6 years before I started working in eating disorders specifically, but that was why I needed to go to a higher level of care and learn eating disorders, was because I was missing that huge chunk, like the mental health piece from my own knowledge. And so yeah, like learning about DBT and ACT and CBT, like, and so many other things too. It's just like, I was just like hit with like a wave of new information, and it was so interesting and exciting to learn these things. And it wasn't just for my clients, like it was for me too. And so it's like there's so much out there, and if you don't know, you don't know. But like, I just want to put a plug out for therapists just as a whole, because it's so helpful.
So true. Yeah, I didn't really know much about DBT until my second placement internship at my graduate level schooling. And I had another social worker at that gospel mission who loved DBT, and so I was like, okay, I'm here to learn, like, let's learn. But then I put that into practice, and I watched it work. And then I, after, I think I was at that internship for 8-9 months, something like that, and I myself was practicing those tools that I was trying to teach others to do. And that's something to be said too, is once you apply it, you can teach others to apply it, and it'll just spread like a little happy virus. Let's just teach everybody to take care of themselves.
Right.
Wow, what a world that would be. So again, you don't have to agree with it in the moment, or maybe that mode of therapy doesn't work for you, but it's maybe something to ask a therapist for the first time is, what modalities of therapy do you use? What do you identify with? And get them to talk about what that looks like, what that means. Because when people ask me, what kind of therapy do you do? Oh, I do CBT and DBT. What is DBT? I love that question. Ask me all day long. I will tell you.
Yes.
It is not a secret. Let's talk about it. Thanks to everybody who tuned into our little podcast today. Let us know what you think about the podcast by giving us a little like, a follow, or do nothing. All behavior is communication.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to take life one sip at a time.